Hi YouTube, welcome to this Yin Yoga practice with me. My name is Antonella and we will be focusing on the hips today. Because it's a Yin practice, we're going to need a couple of blocks. So I have two over here. If you don't have blocks, you can always use books, a pillow and a blanket. So make sure that you have these available for you. The focus of the practice will be the hips. So if I had to ask you, where are your hips? Most of you would probably point towards the hip bones, the lateral section of the hips. But the hips are so much more complex than that. So as we move into our practice today, I'll explain a little bit more as we go along. So, first things first, come into your cross-legged seat. I'm going to grab hold of my pillow and sit on it so I can have a little bit of height in the spine. Place your hands on your knees. Close your eyes. And bring your total awareness to the container that is your body. Observing the breath, allowing something like silence, maybe even stillness, to move through you. And if your mind has wandered, bring it back to the breath. Bring it back to the container within our body, the space that we hold. As we move into our Yin Yoga practice today, it's important that in every asana we feel safe. You need to take time to get into the pose. This could even take up as long as 1 full minute. And then only once you are comfortable, you find stillness and you let go. We're going to move into our first pose, which is a butterfly. I'm going to sit on the pillow. I'm going to place my feet together and knees apart. So everyone set up like this. If it's uncomfortable for you to sit on a pillow, you can move the pillow away. If your knees are shooting up and it's making you feel very insecure about the inner thighs, you can grab hold of a block and place it underneath each knee. So remember, we want to take our time to set up. We want to feel comfortable. Once we are here, the next step is to fold all the way forward. Again, as far as you can. If you can place your hands on the ground, do that. If your hands are sitting somewhere by your ankles or your shins, that's fine. You can rest your elbows on your knees. So set up and take your time. So the first rule I mentioned was to take your time and settle in, and then find stillness. The second rule of Yin is to find your edge. So your edge needs to be somewhere in between a 10 and a 1. So if you can imagine 10 being completely intense and difficult, and 1 feeling nothing at all, we want to head over to about a 5 or a 6. So we're feeling the stretch, but we're still able to maintain. For the most part of the class, I am going to be quiet, and I will cue you every time we need to move. The third rule of yoga, of Yin Yoga, is to let go. Stillness, edge, release. Okay, slowly rise up. Breathe in. Breathe out. And bring your knees together. Good. Moving into our second asana. I'm going to keep the blocks close by. Grab hold of your blanket and flatten it onto the mat, 2 blocks towards the front of the mat. Coming into all fours, hands directly underneath the shoulders. We're going to step the right foot on the outside of your right hand. So moving into the first and the most obvious part of the hip. We're going to focus on 4 compartments of the hip today. So the first one is the one that we are all aware of, which is the lateral part of the hip. So that is the front of the hip where the hip bones are. So as we bend into our right knee, we're going to feel this the most along the left thigh, left inner thigh, and your left quad. Grabbing the blocks, we're going to place a block under each shoulder. Your back knee will be on the blanket, pointing your left toes away and relaxing into this space. For most of us, this is the part of the hips that are usually the most tight, and the reason for that is because we sit a lot during our day, so we never really have time to open up. This is one of the best asanas to do if you're a cycler or a runner. If you want to go deeper from here, you can move the blocks away and place your hands underneath your shoulders. We want to find our edge, whatever that looks like for you. And then return to stillness. The next time you breathe in, straighten out the front leg, flex into the foot, and then make your way to all fours, moving your hips from side to side. So the same thing on the other side. Knees on the blanket. Step your left foot on the outside of your left hand. Grab hold of the blocks. Start off with the blocks. And only if you feel safe and secure, you can move the blocks away, but you don't have to. What we're doing today is we're moving deep into the fascia, deep into the connective tissues within the body. So even though we're not burning a lot of calories, what we're doing is much more special. We're massaging into not only the muscles, but the nervous system. Training our brain to be still and not to fidget. Breathe in into this moment and breathe out. Straighten out the left leg, fold forward, rebend the left knee and make your way to all fours. Okay, our next asana is going to be Child's Pose. So, we want to have our big toes together, our knees apart, and extending the arms forward, as far forward as we can, relaxing the forehead on the ground. So I find most of my students lifting their seat up like that, because they don't have that mobility of the hips. So those of you that are like that, you want to take a pillow, place the pillow underneath your seat, grab hold of your block, place the block underneath your forehead. So you're forcing yourself to sit back. And if you need to lift your head up, because if you bring your forehead down and your seat lifts up, then all you do is stay here and look forward. Eventually, you're going to be able to bring your forehead on the ground, and eventually you're not even going to need the block. In this particular asana, we're working on two different compartments of the hips. We're working on the inner thighs, the adductors, by stretching our knees apart. And then we're also working on the glutes, which are also part of the hips. The hips are very complex. There's a lot going on. And not only physically. The sacrum really is the area where we store a lot of emotion, past trauma, fear, anger. And that's why it can feel very uncomfortable to sit and to hold this space. Do your best and try let go. For the last minute of this pose, bring your arms alongside your body so that you can give your shoulders a rest. If you like, you can rest to cheek or keep your forehead on the ground. Extend your arms forward and rise up into all fours. Okay, our next pose is our pigeon pose. So we'll start off with the right leg, and I'm going to give you a few options. So option 1, bringing the right knee in front of the right thumb and extending the left leg back, and that's where you're going to stay. Option 2, grab hold of your block and place the block underneath your hip, and then maybe get this right foot slightly more forward. Option 3 is to keep this foot forward and to move the block away. And then wherever you are, making sure that you're not moving or lopsided into one direction. We want to keep the hips stable and as comfortable as possible. So don't be afraid to prop up and fold all the way forward. So here we're working on the front of the hip on the left side, the hip flexor, which is very tight for most of us. And we're also working on the outer hip. The outer hip is along the outside of your hip, all the way to your glutes, and this we can feel on the right side of the body. So a lot is going on here. For some of us it can be super intense to hold. So not only are we physically working the body, and we can all feel that, but we're also working the body energetically, sending prana, which is energy, into the hips, stimulating the flow within the area of the hips. So the subtle energy of the body, maybe we can't see it, but it's definitely there. The subtle energies are known as meridians. So the Chinese medicine believes in these subtle energies that are moving through, in and out of our body. And it's important that we open up those lines so that we can feel better in the body. Feel at ease with the space around us. We've got 1 more minute. Good, nearly over, you guys. Let's slowly rise up. Oh, it can feel like a lot, like a fire. Okay, make your way to all fours. Take your time. And it's okay if you feel like you're 100 years old. Let's move the hips from side to side. Crack, crackle and pop. And returning to center. So the same thing, this time the left knee moves towards the left thumb, right leg extends. So for this side, I'm not as open as the other side. My left hip is probably coming up a little bit more, but I'm still comfortable enough to fold forward. So you decide what you need to do to make sure that you feel safe. Remember, we're here for quite some time. Extending the right hip flexor. And lengthening the left abductor, left side glute. At the same time, focusing on your breath. Notice the breath. If your breathing has become shallow, which means your breathing is a little bit heavier, it means you need to back off. You want to find a breath that is sweet and long. And remember, this isn't forever. 2 more minutes. Let go. Breathe in. Take your time, exhale as you rise up. All fours. Moving into a few cat and cow movements, dropping the belly, rounding the spine. Good. And now our last pose before we head into Savasana, relaxation, is to open up the inner thighs. So we did this a little bit with Child's Pose and in the beginning of our class. But now I want us to go a little bit deeper. So either use your blanket or your pillow, sitting down. Open your legs nice and wide. You want to tilt forward. Most of us are probably going to feel it's going to feel quite difficult for us to tilt forward because we're going to need to prop ourselves up behind. And this is also an option. So you can stay here with your hands behind you. Eventually you're going to get that sensation where you fold all the way forward. I'm going to take a pillow and one block and place it out in front of me so I can lie flat, because this feels really good for me. Just make this shape work for you in any way. And we're only here for just over a minute, so not too long. And rise up. Move your props away. Bend your knees, feet together. And we're heading into Savasana, final part of our practice. Lie on your back and get comfortable. Close your eyes. Relax the toes, feet. Turn the palms of the hands to face the sky. Release your fingers. Release your hips, belly, chest. Relax your head. And I'll wake you in a few minutes. breathe. Return to the body, the physical body, making movements, and then stretch. Bring your knees to your chest. And come on up your favorite way. As we finish off our practice with a sounding Om, pray in front of your heart. Inhale. And thank you for joining me, friends. And namaste.